this. All right. So welcome to Afternoon Art Club. I'm going to start out by doing a brief review of things we talked about last time, and then we'll go ahead and get started today on today's lesson. Now, I do want to remind you that if this is your very first time joining us, that you need to go back and watch the video from session 1 before you try to do the artwork that we're doing today, because we already started an artwork 2 weeks ago when we met. So if this is your first time, I've sent out all the videos. So if you are joining for the first time, then please watch that first video, and then you can come back and watch the video of this session to continue that. You're still welcome to join us today, though. All right, so I want to take a minute. I'm going to share my screen with you. I am going to make this like this. And I'm going to share my screen, make sure that I'm sharing here. I think I'm sharing. All right. Can you guys see that thing that says perspective drawing? Hopefully. Yep. Okay, good deal. All right. I am going to pull up my chat box to make sure I can still see everyone. Okay. All right. So, my screen sharing stopped. Let me try that again. Sometimes we have technical difficulties. Here we go. All right, so hopefully now you can see my screen. We have been talking about perspective drawing. I just want to do a quick reminder for you about the things we talked about last time. So, if you take a look, last time we talked about horizon line and vanishing point, and we talked about how to find those. The horizon line is where the sky meets the land, and the vanishing point is the point on the horizon line where it looks like all the things that go back into space meet. So that should be something that you remember from last time. So, I'm trying to get through here. All right, so we're doing a lesson on 1-point perspective. We started last time with our 1-point perspective drawings. We drew a little farm with some sun rays in the background, and so we're going to continue working on that today. And I just wanted to remind you, I'm going to go forward to this artwork, that when we're looking at an artwork, we can find the horizon line by looking at where the sky meets the land, and so that red line across the center would be the horizon line. And we can follow all the lines that go back into space, and they should meet at a point, just like these purple lines. If we follow the lines of the street, that takes us back. Both of them look like they meet kind of right at that doorway in the background. So that would be our vanishing point. That's how we find our vanishing point. We also took a look at this artwork by Elizabeth O'Neill Verner. And again, we found if we follow the lines, we can find the horizon line, and then we're following the lines of the sidewalk to find our vanishing point right there in the middle. So I'm going to stop sharing this now and come back. And I'm going to share with you my desktop so you can kind of see what we're going to be working on today, sort of where we left off, and show you a little bit of what we did last time. So give me just a second. Here we go. Okay, that looks a little weird. Let me stop that and try it again. One second for me. Sorry. I'll try it one more time. We'll still go with it even if it's not working just the way we want to this time. Okay, good deal. All right, so last time we started drawing a 1-point perspective farm, and I'm going to kind of show you what we did and where we got to. So when we started out last time, we looked at our 1-point perspective practice sheet, and we practiced drawing these shapes, connecting the points of our shapes to the vanishing point using a ruler. So we took our ruler and we lined it up with the point of our shape. I like to start with the one closest to the vanishing point. We put our ruler on the corner and our ruler on the vanishing point, and we drew a line. And we did that with all of our lines, just like we did here. We did it with all of our lines going back into space. So we would start with the one closest to the vanishing point, just like this, line that up with our pencil point, and then line it up with the vanishing point, and draw a line, just like that. And we did that for all of, we did it for 2 of our shapes, and then I wanted you guys to practice by doing these other ones at home. So I hope that you guys got some good practice by doing these little sheets that helped to get these shapes, these basic shapes, drawn in 1-point perspective. All right, so that's kind of an example of what your star should look like, something like that. So we did these practice sheets together. After we did the practice sheet together, we started on our drawing, and this is the one that I did when we were together. And we drew our horizon line, which you can see here. A horizon line goes directly across the paper, horizontally across the paper. And we decided where our vanishing point was going to go. We always put our vanishing point on the horizon line. So anywhere on this horizon line would have been fine for us to put our vanishing point. I chose right here. And then we started making some connecting lines that went back to the vanishing point. And these are going to be the rows of our farm. So kind of like farm rows. And so I just made some marks at the bottom of the paper, and I lined those up with the vanishing point and got my field. I did that all everywhere below the horizon line. And then above the horizon line, we drew a half circle for the sun. And then we did the same thing. We put some dots around the sun to where we wanted the sun's rays to go. And we connected those dots with the vanishing point. And we drew a line outward toward the edge of our paper. So I found this spot, put my ruler there, I connected it with the vanishing point, and I drew a line outward toward the edge of my paper. And I continued that all the way around the sun until we got this type of a drawing. So today, I want to tell you some additional things that you can do to kind of bring your drawing to life. And I want to show you 2 examples that I have done. Now, this can get very, very complicated if you want it to, depending on how comfortable you are with drawing. If drawing is something that's kind of new to you, or it's not something that, or something that you're a little bit nervous about, if drawing is something that you're a little bit nervous about, then you can do something really simple. If it's something that you feel like you are really an accomplished artist and you can draw really well, then I encourage you to do something a little more tricky. So I'm going to show you a simple one that I did first. So this one, I used the rows of my farm, and I sort of made a shape farm. And I just put sort of shape. I liked to imagine that my shapes were like the crops in the field. And each row, I chose a different shape. And I started with the shape where it was closest to me, it was large. And as it went back into space, it got smaller and smaller and smaller, just like our little rows of the farm. They start out kind of wide, and as they go back into space, they get smaller and smaller and smaller. So I did the same thing with my shapes to give the illusion that they're going back into space. So on the bottom half of my paper, I just chose to make shapes in each of the rows. And in the top half of my paper, I chose to make each of the areas between the sun rays a different line pattern. So in this one, my landscape farm perspective drawing was lines in the sun area, and below the horizon line, I chose to have shapes. I also added a little barn, and I'm going to show you how to do that today. I'm going to show you actually 2 different ways to do that today. But in this example, I haven't added color to this one yet. In this one, I decided I wanted to draw actual crops. And it's just the time of year for pumpkins. And so I decided that I was going to create sort of a little pumpkin farm here. and I've drawn just the outline of some pumpkins, and I'm going to show you how to do that today. And I drew the little vines of the pumpkin, and when I add the color, I'll try to bring that to life a little bit more. The other thing I'll show you how to do is another way to make a barn, and that is the way I've done it here. I've drawn this barn in 1-point perspective. So this is a really simple barn, and you'll notice that it's sitting on the horizon line. Do you see the horizon line right here where the sky meets the land? And my barn is sitting on the horizon line. If it is sitting on the horizon line like this, then we don't actually have to draw it in perspective. You can just draw the front of the barn to look anything like you want it to look. But in this one, you'll notice that here is the horizon line right there. You can see the horizon line going across my paper. And so we drew the barn a little bit below the horizon line. And in that case, we do need to draw it in perspective to show how it's going back into space. So I'm going to show you both ways to do it. And you can do it any way you want. If you want to add a barn, or it doesn't even have to be a barn. It could be a house, or it could be a car in the background, anything that you want to put on your farm. But I want to show you how you can add things like buildings, both using 1-point perspective, and how to do it by just placing your items on the horizon line. And that's a little bit less difficult. So it's completely up to you, whatever you feel comfortable doing. Now, let's go ahead and get started with that. I'm going to go back to my example right here where I don't have any buildings at all. And I want to show you how to go about drawing a simple barn. Now, I'm going to show you first how to draw a barn that is on the horizon line, one that's just sitting right on the horizon line right here. So I can see my horizon line. It's going horizontally. Horizon and horizontal, those are similar words. It's going horizontally across my paper. And I'm going to show you how to draw a barn that's really, really simple. And we're actually just going to do that using really simple shapes. So I can use a ruler, or I can just kind of freehand it. I like to use my ruler, and it's good practice to draw lines and shapes with rulers. So I think it's a good idea to try it. So I have my ruler and my pencil. The only items you're going to need today are your ruler, your pencil, your drawing that you've already started. If you have an eraser that you can use, or just use the eraser on your pencil, that's great. And then later on today, we're going to be using some either crayons or colored pencils, or any kind of coloring materials that you have. It could be markers, colored pencils, crayons, paint, anything you have to add color with. So back to our barn. Let's start by just adding a simple barn on the horizon line. So I want to start out by just drawing a simple square or rectangle to get me started. Sometimes when I'm drawing something that's a little bit complicated, I like to start with just a simple shape, and then I can build on that shape. I don't have to start with something very complicated. So I'm just going to start with a simple little box on the horizon line, just a little box sitting on the horizon line there. It's not very complicated. It's simple to draw, just something nice and simple. Now, if I want my barn to have a roof, I can think about what kind of roof I want that to be. I am going to just put a simple triangular roof on this barn. So far, so good. All I've had to do so far is do a square or a rectangle, and then a triangle on top. So already I'm starting to build the shape of my barn. Now I want my barn to have like a little sort of animal stable off on the side. So I'm going to draw a little bit of a slanted roof off to the side, just like that. And I'm going to, that's the roof part. And now I'm going to draw a part down to the ground. So this area is going to be maybe my animal stables. If I'm imagining how my barn is used or how it might work, this is maybe where my animals would live. And then on this side, I want to have a little porch where maybe if I have a tractor or something like that, it can live under this little awning maybe. So I'm going to draw that on this side. So I'm going to do another sort of slanted line coming out, just like that. Something pretty simple. So far, nothing too difficult. And I'm just going to draw a line straight up and down right now, just so that I kind of know where my barn is. So far, so good. This is sort of what my barn is starting out looking like. Now, I want to erase this line. I'm shaking my whole desk doing that, and it's shaking the camera. All right. So I wanted to erase that top line there, just the line between the triangle and the rectangle, just to make things a little simpler and make it look a little bit more like an authentic barn. And maybe I want my barn to have a hayloft or something up here. So I'm just going to draw a little square, almost like a little window up here for my hayloft. Didn't draw that first line very good, but that's okay. You know, drawing, when you're drawing, it's always a good idea to have an eraser nearby so that you can erase when it doesn't look exactly like you want it to look. All right, I'm actually going to bring that in just a little. Wasn't centered very well. I love practicing with my ruler. It helps me make straight lines, but also it's just good practice for how to move the ruler around on the paper. So here's going to be where my hayloft is. And now I want to draw a little barn door. So I'm going to draw a barn door that is maybe just around the same size as my hayloft window. And I want it to have two doors. I want it to be double doors, something like that. And I need to draw the top of my doors. Something real simple. Now, if you don't want to use your ruler for all this drawing, that's totally fine. You don't have to. But I like to practice with mine. And I'm going to draw some little cross beams that help hold my barn door together here. So now it's looking more like a barn. You see that? So now we have something that looks a little bit more like a barn. Now, if I wanted this to look more like just a porch and not just an extra stable area, I could draw a horizontal line right here and then sort of just erase this line so it looks like this is just a little awning or an overhang. And I could draw another little support beam in there, kind of in a little. So all of that I just drew with really simple shapes, and none of this requires any perspective drawing. This was just a really simple drawing. It doesn't require any special perspective lines. And so if you want to try to draw a house or a barn or something in the background that doesn't use perspective drawing, just make sure that you draw it directly on your horizon line. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, good deal. Now, let me show you if you wanted to put a barn that in your drawing that does use perspective drawing. So I'm going to draw one kind of down in here that does use perspective drawing, and you can choose, or you could even try to do both. It's completely up to you. This is your drawing. But let me show you how we might do that. So I'm going to start out by getting down the shape of my barn the same exact way that I did before. So I'm going to just start, even though I have all these rows of my farm, I'm just going to draw right over the top of those. And I'm going to just start with a square. Same thing I did before. So I'm just going to draw a square here. Nothing fancy about this. I didn't measure anything. I just drew a square, just like that. And I'm going to erase the lines that are on the inside there, just because I don't want those lines going through my barn. All right. And then I can go ahead and get down the roof shape of my barn. Now, I could just try something like the triangular roof that we did right here. It doesn't have to be something really tricky or hard. So just a triangle roof would be just fine. Or if I wanted to do maybe a more kind of complicated roof shape, I might try something like this, which has sort of a triangle at the top. That's not very good. Let me try that again. again, it's nice. It's always very, very nice to be able to erase and start over. So I'm going to do a little triangle here. Just like that. Just a little kind of floating triangle. And then I'm going to make that one a little longer. And then I'm going to make another sort of another line that connects this triangle line down, and one that connects this point down like that. So that gives me kind of a different shaped barn roof with some different angles to it. And I can go back and kind of darken my lines. If I don't like the way that something looks, I can erase it and try it again. There we go. So this is kind of the shape of my barn. So I drew just a square, and then I drew just some diagonal lines to get sort of this barn-shaped roof. Now I want to show you how to draw this in perspective. It's very, very simple, and it's just exactly like what we did on this sheet. So if you could do this, then you can do the barn in perspective. If you could do this, you can do the barn. Let me show you how to do it. So just like with our barn, we're going to start, here's our vanishing point. First, find your vanishing point. We're going to start with the angle that's the closest to the vanishing point. And I'm going to say it's this one. Okay. I didn't mean to draw that little line. Okay, so I'm going to put my pencil point on that point of my shape. I'm going to line it up with the vanishing point, and I'm going to draw it going back into space a little. Now, I'm not going to draw a line going all the way to the vanishing point because this is going to be sort of a short building, and I don't want to have to erase all that. So I just drew a little bit of a line there. Not all the way back, just back a little bit. Again, I found the point closest to the vanishing point. I lined up my ruler with that point and with the vanishing point, and I drew my line back into space a little. Okay? Now let's do the same thing with this bottom point. We found this bottom point down here. I like to put my pencil point on that corner, line my ruler up with my pencil point, and then with my vanishing point. And I'm just going to draw about the same length of line. Not a lot longer, just like that. Okay, now I'm going to erase this line that's going through the middle. That's part of my field, and it might be confusing to me, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that one. And I might get rid of this one on top too, because that's a little confusing too. If a line is in the way, just erase it. Okay. Now I'm going to find my next point, and that's this sort of little point in my roof line. Put my pencil there, line my ruler up with my pencil, and then with my vanishing point, go back into space, just like that. And then I'm going to do the very tip top of the roof, line my pencil up with that and the vanishing point, and go back into space, just like this. All right, so we're almost there. Now I'm going to decide how big I want my barn to be. If I draw the line, the back line of my barn up here, then that would be sort of a really short barn. But if I drew it way back here, that'd be a nice long barn. That seems like it would be very useful on my farm. So I'm going to draw mine kind of big. And I'm just going to draw a vertical line. That vertical line is the back of my barn. So all I did was, and remember, vertical means straight up and down. So it's a line that's going straight up and down. Just going to draw a line straight up and down in between these two lines that are going back to the vanishing point. And I can erase the parts that are hanging over, just like that. I can erase. Okay, now what we're going to do, and this is maybe the trickiest part of the whole thing, so pay close attention. The diagonal lines of the roof can be a little bit tricky, so watch what I do. Watch very, very closely. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line it up just on this line of my roof. Just gonna line it up just like that. See how it lined up nice just on that line? And now I'm gonna slide my ruler back and I'm gonna try to keep that angle exactly the same. And I'm gonna use the back side of my ruler here. I'm gonna line it up until I get to this little point right here. So watch that again. I'm gonna line my ruler up on this line of my roof, line it up, and I'm gonna try to slide it back without changing the angle at all. Just like that, till I get to that back point. And then I'm gonna make a line. Oops, my ruler slid out of the way. I made that line. So this angle right here should be the same as this one because I lined up my ruler on that line and I slid my ruler back. So I'll show you one more time. I lined my ruler up on that line and I just slid my ruler back and then I made that line just like that. Okay. And then we're going to do the same thing with this top one. We're going to line our ruler up right on that line right here. And I'm going to actually have to slide it forward a little bit to meet this point right there. So I'm going to line it up, slide it till I can see it, and then make that line just like that. And now I have the shape of my barn and it's drawn in 1-point perspective. So if you could draw your shapes, if you could draw the shapes in this exercise, then you should be able to draw this right here. Now I did erase the rows on my field and I'm going to actually put those back where I erased them where they should still be. So I'm going to just bring that back up to the house right there. Just line my ruler back up on that line and fill those back in. Okay, so if this seems a little bit too tricky for you, if this seems like it would be really, really difficult to do, then just stick with this. The barn on the horizon line does not need to be drawn in perspective, but a barn below the horizon line would need to be drawn in 1-point perspective. Now I could do the same thing here. I could draw a hayloft or something like that right here in the same way. So I just maybe want a triangular hayloft here. I'm going to give it a flat top. So something real simple. I can draw barn doors if I want. Anything that is that would make my barn my own. So that's completely up to you how you decorate it, what you add. It's up to you if you add one on the horizon line or one below the horizon line and use that 1-point perspective. Whatever makes you most comfortable, you can do it both ways. Again, in this one, I drew one on the horizon line. And in this one, I drew one below the horizon line. So any way that you're comfortable doing this is totally fine. Now, the next thing I want to show you how to do is to draw some crops in here. So I'm going to show you how to draw pumpkins, but you don't have to do a pumpkin patch. This doesn't have to be a pumpkin patch. It could be a field full of carrots or cabbage or corn or any kind of crop that you can think of filling your field with. But pumpkins are fun and seasonal and not difficult to draw. So I want to show you how to do that. And I'm going to start by starting with the row closest to myself. Okay? And if you can draw a half circle, then you can draw a pumpkin. So let me show you how to do that. We're going to start out just by drawing sort of a little backwards C, just like that, a little backwards C. Then I'm going to draw maybe a regular C shape, and I like to make the two meet at the bottom. They don't have to meet at the top, but it looks nice if they meet at the bottom. And then I'm going to draw another C shape kind of inside of it, and then a backward C shape over here. And then just a little bit of a curved line in the middle. And it doesn't matter if the curve goes this way or this way, but that'll make sure that it looks like it is a curved pumpkin and not flat. So there we go, we have a pumpkin. And we can add a little stem to our pumpkin if you want. Just with 2 lines, and then just put a top on it there. Just something nice and simple. Now, as we add more pumpkins to our row, as things go back into space, these lines are going to need to get, or your pumpkins are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and they're going to look like they're closer together. So let's do another one here, a little bit smaller than the first maybe. Just like that, can make those lines meet. Okay, then we can do like this, some curved lines, and then I'll do a curved one in this direction. And I can just make a little stem. All right, and I can go back and do it again. I can do a C shape and a backward C shape, a C shape, and a backward C, and one more curved little line, and a stem. And as I go back, remember, I'm going to get smaller. And I like to sometimes just draw in the outline of them and then go back and do the details. Something like that. And then I can go back and do the details. And these ones in the back, you don't need quite as many extra lines. You can just do maybe 1 or 2 little lines just to get the general shape in. And add those stems. Your stems can go different directions and look different. They don't all have to look the same. So it can be different or the same. So this is just an example of what you can do, but I want to remind you that if drawing something like pumpkins or corn or any kind of crop seems a little bit too tricky, then just go back to drawing something simple like shapes. So here I just did a row full of ovals. And honestly, I could have turned these ovals into watermelons pretty easily just by adding some lines along the outside of them. Could have turned them into watermelons pretty easily. Or these circles could have been turned into pumpkins maybe. So it's easy to start with basic shapes and change those basic shapes, or to go straight to making crops in your field. It's completely up to you. Whatever you feel like works best for you is what I encourage you to do. So then once I have something like this down, I might then add maybe the vines of the pumpkins. Pumpkins grow on vines on the ground typically. And so they have sometimes curly vines. And I can draw in, if you have crayons or colored pencils, if you got a kit from us at the museum, you have a small little pack of crayons and a small little pack of colored pencils. But you can also use, if you have markers at home, if you have different crayons than are in the kit, or if you didn't get a kit from us, you can use any kind of coloring materials that you have. I'm going to be using some colored pencils because this is just what I have at my desk today. But I can kind of just go back over this and add some color. So I'm going to just make my pumpkin. Pumpkins come in all sorts of colors. There's not just orange pumpkins. There's yellow pumpkins. There's spotted pumpkins. There's even pink pumpkins. I've seen a few pink pumpkins this year. So you can go ahead and add some color. You can add those vines of your the pumpkin patch if you want, if you're drawing pumpkins. If you're drawing something like corn, then that would have like a nice tall green stalk. So I might want to do this, and then I might want to draw some leaves, just simple leaves. For my pumpkins. So just something really simple. It doesn't have to be something that is super realistic. You could always look up maybe what the leaf of a pumpkin vine looks like and try to draw those leaves really accurately. I'm just drawing sort of a rough pumpkin leaf shape to turn this into my pumpkin patch. And if I want, I can even draw sort of maybe some brown dirt down here in my pumpkin patch to add color. Something nice and simple. So it doesn't have to, it can be as detailed as you want it to be or as simple as you want it to be. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed with your drawing. If you have these rows drawn in perspective with the sun's rays drawn in perspective, then everything else is really just up to your imagination. Drawing in what you're growing on your farm or what buildings might be on your farm. Do you have any vehicles on your farm? Maybe you have a truck. You could use, as long as you draw that truck on the horizon line, you don't have to draw it in perspective. So just remember, whatever you don't want to use perspective to draw with, you draw right on the horizon line. So this is just kind of an example of how you might add color. I'm going to connect this guy to the vine. I want to make sure it's connected. There we go. And so now I've just sort of started drawing my pumpkin. So you can see what we have here. Now, before we move on, I do want to show you just one more little thing. I want to show you that, again, it can be something that's simple, like adding just a line pattern above the horizon line and shapes below the horizon line. And maybe with this one, when I do the sun, maybe I want these areas to be different colors. I could color them so that it looks like a sunset, for example. I could always color this so it looks a little bit like a sunset. So this is just an example of the type of thing that we can do with our perspective drawing. Now, I am going to stop sharing for just a moment so everybody can see me again. Can everyone see me here? Make sure. Okay. All right, so I'm not sharing right this moment. Okay, now, guys, before we move on, the next thing that I'm going to do, the next thing we're going to do together is I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask me some questions if you have them. But before we do that, just for the people that are watching the recorded video, I want to just end the recorded part of this video by telling you a few things. And then after that, please stick around. If you're on the live Zoom call, please stick around to ask questions. But before we leave together, before I stop the recording, I want to say a couple things. First of all, I want to encourage you to take part in some what I like to call peer review. And peer review is just a fancy way to say get other people's opinions on your artwork. So I encourage you to ask a friend or a family member to tell you a couple of things about your artwork. So once you've completely finished your artwork, once you've finished, so if this is my finished artwork, let's imagine this is my finished work, I want you to ask your friend or family 2 questions, okay? So the first question I want you to ask your friend or family is, what are 2 things that you really, really like about my artwork? What are 2 things that you really, really like about this artwork. Maybe if it's this one, someone might tell me that they like all the different colors that I used, or maybe they like that I used a different shape in every single one of my rows. Or maybe they'll tell me that they like that I used a different line pattern in every section of my sky. Or maybe they'll tell me that they like the way that I drew my barn. But I want you to ask someone to tell you 2 things that they really like about the artwork that you've completed. And then I want you to ask them, what is one thing that you think that I could maybe make a little bit better? So maybe someone would tell me with this artwork that I could add a little bit more color in my sky. I could have made my sky a little bit more colorful. Or maybe they'll tell me that they think I could go back and color a little bit more neatly in the barn area, that maybe I didn't color very neatly. And I could try to improve my artwork by coloring a little bit more neatly there. So again, you're going to ask your friend or family member to tell you 2 things that they think you did really well that are very impressive about your artwork. And you're going to ask them to tell you one thing that that they think you can improve. Okay, so 2 things they really like and one thing they think that you can improve. And you know, when we get feedback or we get our artwork to be reviewed by our friends or our family, it helps us to become better artists. Sometimes my family members or my friends might notice something that I didn't notice before, or they might see something that that I think that I didn't do a very good job on, but they really liked it. So I might not know if it was a good idea to use so many colors in the bottom of my artwork. But if the people that I show it to say, I really like how you did that, then that might make me feel a little bit better about the work that I've created. And it also helps me to find out what else I can improve. What can I do to be an even better artist than I already am? By asking for feedback. So this is an important part of the art making process. And I want you to make sure that you ask those 2 questions of someone before next time we meet. So ask someone those questions. And the last thing that I'm going to say before I stop the recording, and I'll let you guys ask questions if you have them, is when you are finished with your artwork, when you have completely finished your artwork, please lay your artwork down flat on a table surface and take a really good picture of it. Try to get all the sides of it. Try to make sure that it doesn't have any weird shadows on it and that it's nicely lit. And please email me your artwork, your completed artwork. In December, when we're all finished with Afternoon Art Club for this season, we are going to host an online exhibition of student work. So we're going to be showing all the artwork that you create in an online gallery for people to enjoy your artwork. So in order to do that, I need you to send me those images. Now, if you don't have a way to take photographs, if you don't have a phone or a computer or anything that can take photographs, or you're not comfortable or you don't feel like you can get a good photograph, in December, we'll have a day when you can drop off your artwork for us to take pictures of, and then we'll give it right back to you. So we can do the photographing here at the museum if you want us to. But if you can do it at home, we would love for you to just send in a photograph. And you can send that photograph to me at my email address. I'm going to hold this up. It is FLOMUS_EDU@me.com. So that's my email address. If you'll send that to me, then I would really, really appreciate seeing it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Hang around if you have questions, and just give me 1 minute.